Welcome back to What We Have in Common. I'm Darren Hamilton. I want to begin with an observation. If you've been involved in Texas politics long enough, you've probably heard modern Republican politicians describe themselves as fiscal conservatives. A lot. Probably more often than you've heard Texans complain about California, which is really saying something. Because fiscal conservatism has been one of the defining ideas of modern Republican politics for years. Spend responsibly, avoid unnecessary debt, live within your means, don't burden future generations. Those are pretty reasonable principles. In fact, they're so reasonable that most Americans already practice them. Because unlike governments, normal people don't get to print their own money, at least not legally. If your family spends more than it earns in a year, eventually something happens. Reality arrives, and reality is undefeated. Your bank calls, your credit card company calls, your spouse calls. One of those conversations is usually much scarier than the others, which is why I've always found government debt fascinating, because governments have somehow accomplished what every teenager dreams of accomplishing. They've convinced themselves that the consequences are somebody else's problem. And nowhere is this more remarkable than in politics, because every election cycle, the politicians emerge from the wilderness carrying the sacred tablets of fiscal responsibility. They tell us government must become more disciplined, more efficient, more accountable, more responsible. And the voters cheer, and the election ends, and suddenly everybody develops the spending habits of a drunk billionaire at an auction. It's extraordinary. The same people who lecture Americans about balancing their budgets somehow transform into contestants on a game show called Who's Spending Somebody Else's Money Anyway? Now, before anybody gets upset, let me be clear. This isn't just a Republican problem. Democrats have their own spending addictions. Democrats often believe that every problem can be solved with another program. Republicans often believe that every problem can be solved with another exception. Different paths, same destination. The national debt keeps growing. Government keeps expanding. And future taxpayers keep receiving invoices for decisions they never made. But this episode is about Republicans and Libertarians, and here's where many Libertarians genuinely agree with Republican voters. Debt matters. Not because numbers on a spreadsheet are sacred, but because debt is just delayed accountability. Debt allows politicians to enjoy benefits today while sending the bill to people who haven't even entered the conversation yet. It's the political equivalent of ordering dinner and leaving before the check arrives. And that's where fiscal conservatism starts getting weird. Because if debt is the problem, you would think that politicians would be aggressively eliminating waste. You'd think they'd be scrutinizing spending. You'd think that they would be treating taxpayer dollars like their own money. Instead, they often treat taxpayer dollars like monopoly money found in the couch cushions. Which brings us to one of my favorite topics, corporate welfare, or as it's known in government circles, economic development. Amazing phrase, beautiful, elegant phrase. It's the political equivalent of calling a tax increase a revenue enhancement. Because somehow we've reached a point where politicians can stand in front of a crowd and declare, "We believe in free markets," and then immediately hand billions of dollars to politically connected corporations. Apparently, the invisible hand now comes with a government grant application. And look, I understand the common arguments. We've all heard them. We need the incentives. We need the investments. We need jobs. Fine, let's have that conversation. But can we at least stop pretending that any of this is rugged free market capitalism? Because when government takes money from taxpayers and gives it to selected corporations, that's not a free market. That's government picking winners. It's just socialism with better lobbyists and a Madison Avenue PR firm on retainer. And here's the part that always fascinates me. The average Texan starts a business. They get paperwork, permits, fees, regulations, inspections, endless bureaucratic hurdles. A multinational corporation shows up and suddenly politicians are throwing gift baskets and tax abatements like they're trying to impress a celebrity at a restaurant. Imagine explaining that system to a small business owner. Congratulations on risking your life savings to build something useful. Unfortunately, you only employ 12 people. If you'd like government assistance, please try becoming a multinational corporation first. It's absurd, and Republicans know it's absurd. Many conservatives don't support corporate welfare. Most ordinary Republican voters aren't demanding subsidies. They're demanding fairness. They're demanding accountability. They're demanding responsible stewardship. The people asking for corporate welfare are usually not voters. They're donors. That's the distinction no one makes and no one explains. And here's where my autistic brain notices another pattern. Politicians often describe government spending as necessary when the beneficiaries are powerful, urgent when the beneficiaries are connected, and strategic when the beneficiaries hire lobbyists. But somehow spending becomes reckless the moment ordinary people benefit. Interesting how vocabulary changes depending on who's receiving the check. And this is why I keep coming back to a simple question. Whatever happened to fiscal conservatism? Not the slogan, the actual principle. The idea that government should spend carefully, borrow cautiously, treat taxpayer dollars with respect, and avoid creating special privileges for politically favored interests. Because Republicans and Libertarians still agree on the goal. Government should be responsible. Government should be accountable. Government shouldn't mortgage the future to reward the well-connected. Where we sometimes disagree is consistency, because principles are easy when they cost your opponents. Principles become more difficult when they cost your allies. That's when you find out whether you believe something or are merely campaigning on it. And that's the challenge facing modern conservatism. Not whether fiscal responsibility is still a good idea. It is. The question is whether you're willing to apply it equally to everybody, including the people writing the campaign checks, including the corporations with lobbyists, and including the industries with political influence. A free market means success should come from serving customers, not serving lobbyists. Because if welfare is bad, it should be bad. If subsidies distort markets, they should distort markets. If debt burdens future generations, it should burden future generations regardless of who approved it. Those principles shouldn't change because somebody important is standing in line for the money. And if we're serious about fiscal conservatism, maybe the first place to start isn't with the people receiving government favors. Maybe it's with the people handing them out. Because the surest sign that a government has lost its way isn't that it's spending money. It's that it keeps spending money it doesn't have to benefit people who don't need it while telling everybody else to be responsible. That's not fiscal conservatism. That's a rewards program for political connections. And Texans deserve better than that.